Hello and welcome. Whatever time of day it is or wherever you are in the world, we'd like to welcome you to our edition of this podcast about the book, How to Create a Resilient and Positive Culture in the Workplace. But before we get underway, let's introduce ourselves. Adrian, you go first.
Oh, hi, Jason. Lovely to be here and have this opportunity to talk to you about this very important topic. Well, I'm Adrian Green. I'm the founder and managing director of PressurePoint, which is the people team and organizational development company that undeniably tries to help businesses and individuals and teams to get into their flow. And we've been doing this for 20 years, 23 years now. We deliver programs, coaching programs, consultative selling work, a whole range of things that help people and teams and organizations eventually get into their flow, I suppose, and do better work. And we get to work in the UK, across EMEA, and we've even done some work with you in the Middle East, Jason, haven't we? So
We certainly have.
yeah, and I guess we'll probably talk about my background a little bit later. I used to be an athlete, so I've run a bit, but I'm sure we'll talk about my athletic exploits at some point, Jason.
Very modest as ever, Adrian. Well, look, I'm Jason Wyatt, JCB's Global After Sales and Technical Training Manager at JCB Excavators. And after a 20-year career in the automotive industry, largely in regional sales roles, I was attracted to achieving longer-term performance gains through a role in training and development. And one of my first roles here at JCB was to develop a sales leadership program to yield high personal performance. We're here today because AQR invited us to share our experiences of the JCB CornerStone Programme through the How to Create a Resilient and Positive Culture in the Workplace book, which we're delighted, of course, to review. Cornerstone placed at its heart developing mental toughness, and it's now in its fifth cohort, and it's been recognised by the prestigious Princess Royal Training Award, backed by the City and Guilds. And for that, it's gained a wide-ranging reputation, both within the company and outside it too. And in the words of City and Guilds, the award for the Princess Royal Training Award recognises outstanding training and skills development programmes which have resulted in exceptional benefits for the organisation and its employees. And for the record, that's their words, not mine.
What was the problem the program was aiming to overcome in the first place?
Well, the initial brief I was given, Adrian, was an absolute gift. I mean, it was a nice, wide brief, not too specific. I was asked to develop a sales leadership culture which would support the turning over of more stones to do business. The field sales team that we have here at JCB, they work in an environment that requires them to be seekers of opportunity, curious in their outlook, and confident in their abilities to explore new business. And that requires determination and resilience, and of course, the ability to bounce back from setbacks. The Cornerstone Programme was developed to enable teams to perform at their best and, of course, recognise these skills and behaviours in themselves and others so they could develop and imitate others that had those strengths already.
Can you recall what aspects of mental toughness, because you may or may not have been even familiar with the term, what aspects of that appealed to you when you formulated the program?
Well, way back then, back in 2019. Do you remember that? Back in 2019?
Yeah, seems an age ago.
It does. We discussed the solution and the words resilience and can-do attitude, optimism, and creative problem solving came up time and time again when I spoke with internal stakeholders. And I think what stood out for me is that the mental toughness scale follows what we can think of as a normal distribution, and that the population average in the West is about 5.5 out of 10. And that means that the trait of mental toughness is actually developable through training and coaching. And whilst other profiles, I found them really useful in understanding myself and others and how best to work with them, they can be, well, quite fixed over time. They don't tend to change. You are what you are with some of these profile measures. What I really like about mental toughness is that you can develop it. And as someone with high learning orientation, I'm interested in constantly trying to develop new skills and evolve how I can contribute to the people around me. And mental toughness has got this dynamic nature, so it can be developed over time, and you can reflect on your learning journey. You can reflect on your starting point, where you are and where you want to get to, but most importantly, form a plan on how to get there. But when we were putting this all together, Adrian,
Mm,
resilience just kept coming up, and it's still
mm.
in the news and the press, and every book you read talks about resilience. I think if I counted the number of times resilience appears in this book, it could be a world record. So why is resilience such an important concept, particularly around mental toughness?
I'm going to answer that by initially saying it's probably misunderstood in the first place. Resilience is ultimately about coping with pressure. And now that we're in this kind of VUCA world of, volatile, uncertain aspects that we're facing all the time, people think about, I guess, resilience being the magic weapon to deal with that mounting pressure in this world. But actually, let me define it. I want to define it for everyone. Resilience, I guess, is ultimately being able to cope with pressure. It's being able to pick yourself up and dust yourself off when you've had a setback. It's bending and bending and bending, but not absolutely breaking in that face of adversity. Now, on the other hand, mental toughness is about thriving and operating successfully under pressure. It's not just about coping. So it is leaning into it, it's having this sense of belief and can-do attitude, and getting to the end point is not an option. So there's a difference. So resilience is for sure an aspect of mental toughness. So they are intertwined. But I definitely would agree with you, Jason. The world tends to talk about resilience, and we tend to only hear about the phrase mental toughness in those who probably understand the concept, or in the sporting world, because that's kind of where it generated from, right? It was Jim Lure, if I can remember, coined the phrase back in the 80s in the sporting arena. But it's not by any means just about the sporting arena. It's for all aspects of life.
And I think what I found interesting is last year I set myself a little goal to read a book a week. And I'd read that CEOs, I think it was actually in our first module of Cornerstone, we tell our participants that CEOs on average read around 50 books a year. And I couldn't believe it was possible. So I set myself the goal to do that, goal orientation, achievement orientation.
Yeah.
It was job done. But almost every book I read in business and sports actually came right up to the cusp of talking about mental toughness, and just somehow
Yeah.
didn't get into it. But it's really clear that those that really thrive in lots of different arenas, but particularly business and sport, clearly do exhibit the traits of mental toughness.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. And you're right. The word is coined without people fully understanding what that means either, right? So, and listen, I love the fact that you were drawn to it initially, and you're right. Sports arenas obviously require elements of mental toughness, but something and I'm sure you'd agree, sales environments are often seen as one of the highest pressurized environments in the workplace, and therefore need to thrive and hit your numbers, hit your targets, or if you can't, know that you can go again, and get those targets in by hook or by crook. Is I guess that's as close as you get to being that competitive elite environment, wouldn't you say?
Well, the elite athlete of the business world is how I'd like to
Mm.
think of salespeople.
Very good, very good. Although I'm sure, not wanting to exclude other functions, they might have
Other
to
team
fight.
sports and athletics derivations are also available.
Very good. So listen, when we first spoke about mental toughness, and bearing in mind, you didn't fully necessarily understand what the concept was anyway, but somehow it appealed to you and the stakeholders you were working with. What did mental toughness mean to you, Jason, when back then?
Well, I think there's probably two sides to it. Look, as you said at that time, I'm now a practitioner, as you know, influenced by the work we've achieved through Cornerstone to do
Mm-hmm.
that, to help our participants through their learning journey. But when we began this, and the outset of 2019, I was new to mental toughness, and well, I was curious about it because I wanted to know what mental toughness was. It wasn't a word I'd really heard or a phrase I'd heard of much before, but equally, I was quite unnerved by it because, you know, in my own mind, I was concerned about, when we talk about machoism being associated with the term mental toughness, but I would sort of voice it that I was concerned that it was aiming to make people tough with each other, tough with customers, getting into conflict, being sort of high driver style approach to things, not necessarily caring about the outcomes. And what I think I've really come to find through getting myself accredited, but also, of course, going through the program myself, is that this is really all about self-awareness. And ultimately, I gained a great deal of relief when I realized we weren't trying to get everybody to be a 10, for example, on the scale, because we're programmed, particularly in sales, but as humans, to see the top of the scale being the best, the thing to aim for, the 100%. And what you've really taught me, and what I've learned through the accreditation program with OQR, is that, of course, that's not the case. What it's about is trying to develop your factors and sub-factors to the level that's appropriate for the sort of work that you're doing and the type of stakeholders that you've got, and being able to flex your style. And once I understood that this was about being flexible, being agile in the way that you work, being self-aware of how you are and how it could impact upon others, well, that got really exciting.
Yeah, great. And look, it's and you've touched on many points there, and it's probably worth for the listeners who may not be fully aware of the meaning of the concept. It might be good to start off with what it's not. And you're absolutely right, Jason. Mental toughness, although it's come from the sporting world, has nothing to do with being macho. And the book of which there are wonderful examples and case studies in the book about how the tool is used. It is a very versatile tool. That's one of the things why we at PressurePoint love it. But absolutely, it's got nothing to do with being macho. It's not a unitary concept either. As you've mentioned, there are actually 8 factors that roll up into, or 8 sub-factors that roll up into 4 components that make up mental toughness. And you're absolutely right. You could be mentally tough in one area, yet mentally sensitive in another, or somewhere in the norm, which will show certain behaviours and for sure default thinking patterns up. So I love that personally about the tool. It's not fixed, and I love this conversation when we're working with people about the fact that it's not fixed. It's in the DNA. You are born with a certain level of mental toughness, according to the research, and then you have to kind of work on it as external environmental aspects also obviously play their own role. So that's one of the, there's 3 instant misconceptions about the tool, which is worth sharing with the audience. But it's what all the things you said are what makes a tool a really useful tool to accelerate personal and team and ultimately business performance. Now, talk to me more about the CornerStone program, Jason. And again, I know it's mentioned in the book. Tell me more about it, and even the branding. Why the name CornerStone? Because I remember talking to you that certain companies we work with, we like to brand program. Why the name CornerStone?
Well, firstly, it's really important to me that a program has a brand, it has an identity, and that way your participants in that program, well, they become a small community. They become a group of people who can have positive impact and influence on their colleagues around them. And they can use advocacy to help to build your next cohort, of course, because once you start seeing the good work that comes out of a program like this, well, you just want more people to have a slice of that cake, right? So by having CornerStone, and I conjured up a design very kindly, somebody helped me with a logo, an icon, and it roughly represents an image of a JCB dealer with the Olympic rings above it, with the colours changed to replicate our branding. And we wanted to get across this sense of it being JCB, because it is designed for JCB, but also the sense of the Olympic athlete, because there's so many parallels to it. What I love is that MTQ is used in education and sport and business. I mean, I've used it with my own kids. Okay, I've used it with my son and my daughter, and some very interesting differences. And they've had some experiences through scouting. Actually, my daughter was at a World Scout Jamboree, and I can see how that's developed her mental toughness from the state that it was when we first did the profile with her. And equally, my son has had sporting experiences which have developed his mental toughness too. And you can see that impact on their education. And I can't wait to see what it will do for their careers as they begin to develop them. But the branding was important for me because with the brand, you can communicate a whole set of really complex ideas with just one word or a picture. And that hooks people in. That gets people into discussion. You can communicate Cornerstone and everything in it real simple. The Cornerstone program has got 8 days of training delivered over 7 sessions. So one of them's 2 days. We use a couple of sporting venues. We use the Derby Velodrome and, of course, the fantastic Elite Athletes Centre, which is the epitome of elite athleteness at Loughborough University, which are both very local to us. And there we get to rub shoulders with Olympians, Paralympians, World Commonwealth champions. And just recently we had a presentation from a boxer, which was absolutely out of this world. And these people, you're just rubbing shoulders with them. Yeah, Scott Forrest. You're just having a chat with these people. So would you mind coming and having a chat? And they're in the room chatting with you about their Olympic lifestyle. And that really helped to not hide away that this mental toughness was rooted in sport and education. And of course, Loughborough is both sport and business and education wrapped up in one venue. But the brand is carries through. So we use it on all of our workbooks. We use it on a dedicated portal where all the online materials, including extra video interviews with subject matter experts from outside the business, all the pre-work, all the post-work, links to the Growth Hub Plus, all of which add value to a program. And we're taking a lot of care to build a lot of extra things in. There's some books that we give to participants at specific moments, some of them authored by some of the trainers on the program. We give them access to additional study materials so they can stretch their legs as far as they want to, and they have career-long access to this information. So the Cornerstone program, yes, it's face-to-face. Yes, it's online. Yes, it has a profile to it. Yes, it has coaching. Yes, it has books. And yes, it also has access to these amazing world speakers through Growth Hub Plus. Oh, and yes, it's been recognised with the Princess Royal Training Award. I can't be prouder of what we achieved through this, but most of all, it's the achievement of the people on the program. And that's what Cornerstone allows us to do. The conversations, when you hear them in the corridor, have you been on the Cornerstone program? Are you going on it next year? People want to come on Cornerstone. That's why branding is so important.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. And what a brilliant name. The name, tell me more about the name. How come Cornerstone?
Well, yeah, that's a great one. We tussled around a few names between us.
Yeah, why wasn't it sales leadership skills for salespeople, or
why was it not entry level skills for sales leaders? Wow. Many programs use numbers, don't they? The problem with numbers or association with numbers is you add something or take something from the program and suddenly the number doesn't quite mean what it meant to. But I don't want for this to be a program that's only for people at a certain level. There are very few, red lines around who can and can't come on this program. I've had people who have been in the business for 3 weeks. I've equally had people who've been on in the business for nearly 30 years, and all of them take something different. It gives people an opportunity to really get a master of themselves so that they can contribute the most to the business. We've had people at all levels, all ages. We've had people who are apprentices that have been working with me. So people less than 20 years old, people 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50 and older. The biggest gain, though, is definitely in that sector of the 20 to 30-year-olds, which we'll talk about a bit later. But we don't call it basic leadership skills or any of those things because I want for this to provoke curiosity, Adrian.
And I can't go any further, Jason.